The sound of a gavel slamming echoes like a gunshot through the tense courtroom. The judge's voice booms, sentencing 17-year-old Michael Carter to life without parole. In the back row, his mother, Janelle Carter, screams as if her soul's been ripped from her chest. She collapses to the floor, her body convulsing with sobs. A bailiff lunges to restrain her, but it's too late. Her anguish is uncontainable. Michael, standing silently in an ill-fitted suit, stares forward, unmoving. His eyes, wide and hollow, don't blink. Reporters click cameras, one flash freezing the moment. Janelle goes limp on the cold courtroom floor. Michael whispers something as the guards grab his wrists and guide him away in cuffs. No anger. No tears. Just a whisper. This wasn't justice, this was revenge. Outside, protesters chant and news vans swarm, but inside, silence has already fallen again, broken only by the hollow footsteps of a boy condemned too soon. Before the chaos, before the gavel struck, there was only silence. Michael sat beside his lawyer, eyes scanning the floor. He didn't need to hear the sentence. He already knew. The courtroom was packed, but he felt completely alone. Janelle clutched her purse like a lifeline, knuckles white. She mouthed prayers under her breath, eyes locked on her son. The judge looked down at Michael, not with fury, but with detachment, the cold neutrality of a man who had done this before and would do it again. Across the aisle, the victim's family sat in grim silence. One mother mourning, another mother waiting to mourn. The tension was suffocating. Every cough, every creak of a chair echoed like thunder. The clock above the bench ticked toward Michael's fate. And when the judge finally leaned forward, the air vanished from the room. Time slowed. Everyone held their breath, except Michael, who exhaled once, soft and certain. He had already made peace with being forgotten. Michael was not a killer. But that didn't matter. Not here. Not in this courtroom. His public defender hadn't even looked him in the eye during closing arguments. The jury avoided his gaze. The prosecution painted him as a product of his environment, and the phrase hung in the air like a stain. No fingerprints. No weapon. Just proximity. Just race. Just fear. Michael's heart had pounded during opening statements. Now it barely moved. The only sounds were the judge's voice and his mother's soft sobs behind him. He remembered his friend's face, the one who died laughing at a party just days before. And then nothing. Chaos. Police. Handcuffs. Darkness. Michael's mouth remained shut through it all. Because they told him to. Because they said silence would protect him. But silence hadn't saved him. Silence had sentenced him. Janelle hadn't missed a single hearing. She showed up every day, dressed in her Sunday best, hopeful the truth would shine through. She brought photos of Michael as a boy, smiling, holding spelling bee trophies, hugging his grandmother. She kept them in her purse like sacred texts, never allowed to be shown in court. Each time she looked at the jury, she searched their eyes for humanity. But all she saw was distance. Her own community told her to let it go. Even her pastor, hands folded, said, "Sometimes God's justice isn't ours." But Janelle knew better. She saw the fear in her son's eyes. She saw the sloppiness in the case. And she saw the DA smiling during closing remarks. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. And though her voice trembled in court, her will did not. She would be silent no longer. After the verdict, as they dragged Michael away, Janelle didn't scream because of the sentence. She screamed because she saw it coming and couldn't stop it. The fight had been rigged. Her son hadn't even stood a chance. And when she hit the floor, her body wasn't just reacting to grief. It was reacting to betrayal, by a system, by the silence, by the lie that justice is blind. Michael's whisper echoed through her ears even as consciousness left her. This wasn't justice. This was revenge. Outside the courtroom, life continued. Reporters ran their headlines. Prosecutors shook hands. Another case filed. Another child lost. But in Janelle's heart, something cracked open, not just pain, but purpose. This wouldn't be the end. It would be the start of war. Before the cuffs, before the trial, Michael Carter was just a quiet kid who walked fast, talked soft, and kept his head down. At Lincoln High, he was known for showing up early, turning in homework days ahead of schedule, and volunteering to help the janitor after class. His teachers called him respectful. His classmates called him invisible. But at home, he was everything. Janelle, battling chronic illness, leaned on him like a crutch. He cooked. He cleaned. Yeah. He studied late and worked later, bussing tables at a local diner until 1 a.m., just to keep the lights on. He wanted more. He dreamed of law school. He wanted to rewrite the rules that seemed built to crush boys like him. But dreams are fragile when the world doesn't see you. Michael wasn't reckless. He didn't run with gangs. But the system didn't ask who he was. It only asked where he came from. And the answer was enough to damn him. Janelle Carter remembered a night not long before the arrest. Michael came home soaked from the rain, late from a shift, shivering, but smiling. He had gotten a customer's order wrong, but instead of yelling, the man had tipped him $20 and said, "You're gonna do more than this, kid." Michael kept that 20 folded in his wallet. "My lucky proof," he'd said. That night he made her tea and told her about his plans. Real plans. Law school, scholarships, maybe even leaving the city. Janelle had smiled, but didn't say much. She knew the odds. She knew the world didn't reward boys like Michael. But she also knew her son, stubborn, brilliant, hopeful. She'd held that mug of tea tight and prayed for the first time in years. Not for money. Not for healing. Just for time. Enough time to see him break through. Party was never meant to change everything. It was just a Friday night. Michael didn't even want to go, but his friend Jamal insisted. "Come on, man, you study harder than you breathe." The house was packed, kids dancing, music thumping, red plastic cups everywhere. Michael stayed in the corner, sipping soda, scrolling through college application drafts on his phone. He was there when the fight broke out. Shouts turned to shoves, then panic. Someone ran. Then sirens. Michael froze. He didn't know the victim was Jamal until later. And by then, it didn't matter. Witnesses were vague. The police weren't. A boy had died. Michael had been there. That was enough. He was cuffed outside the house, still holding his phone, GPA glowing on the screen. He didn't speak. He didn't resist. He just stared at the blue lights and realized his life was no longer his. The arrest was fast. No questions, no Miranda rights, just metal on skin. Janelle got the call at 2 a.m. She dropped the phone. At the station, she waited 5 hours before someone even acknowledged her. "You can't see him yet," they said. "He's being processed." Processed like meat. When she finally saw him through the glass, Michael's eyes didn't meet hers. He looked smaller somehow, like the walls were pressing in. She pressed her hand to the glass. He didn't move. The guard ended the visit early. On the ride home, she didn't cry. She drove in silence, hands shaking. She already knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't going to blow over. This was the beginning of a fight she never wanted, but couldn't walk away from. Her son's life was being written without him. And she would not let that stand. The trial came quickly, too quickly. Michael's public defender called her Miss Carter, and talked like he was late for lunch. He never called Michael's teachers, never asked for character statements. When Janelle pressed him, he said, "The system moves fast. Sometimes it's better not to fight too hard." But Janelle knew better. She watched the prosecutor weave a tale, not of evidence but of suggestion. Michael wasn't presented as a killer. He was presented as likely. His hoodie. His zip code. His silence. That's all they needed. Janelle sat in the gallery and clenched her jaw. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a story. And Michael was a convenient chapter. She didn't know the law, but she knew her son. And something inside her, the part that had survived everything, began to harden. If no one else would defend him, then she would learn. She would fight. Janelle was told to move on. Friends dropped by with casseroles and condolences, but they wouldn't look her in the eye. Her pastor hugged her gently and whispered, "Let God carry this." But Janelle wasn't ready to let go. She couldn't sleep. She replayed the trial in her head like a broken record. She started collecting files, court transcripts, arrest records, anything she could get her hands on. The more she read, the more she saw cracks. No fingerprints. No witnesses placed Michael directly. The timeline was thin, the motive thinner. One phrase repeated in her mind. He was there. That was all they had. Just presence. Janelle stopped attending church. She stopped returning calls. The curtains in her apartment stayed shut. Her kitchen table turned into a war room. Michael's letters piled up in a neat stack beside legal pads filled with notes. The world said it was over. Janelle decided it had just begun. She visited the house where the party happened. It was quiet now. No music, no kids. Just a dead yard and peeling paint. Janelle knocked anyway. An older woman answered, cautious, tired. Janelle introduced herself. "My son was arrested for what happened here." The woman didn't answer, just stepped aside. Inside, the house was stale with silence. Janelle moved room to room, piecing together fragments. She found cigarette burns on the floor, faint stains on the wall, a torn jacket left behind. She took pictures. The woman finally spoke. "They blamed the first boy they saw. That's what they do." Her voice was low, resigned. Janelle left with more questions than answers, but something felt different. This wasn't about proving Michael innocent anymore. It was about proving the truth mattered at all. And that meant going deeper. No matter who told her to stop. Back at home, Janelle rewatched local news clips. Again. And again. She played the reporter's footage frame by frame, squinting at every blurred face in the background. She read old social media posts, trying to trace who had been at that party. One name kept popping up, Elena Dot, a junior from Lincoln High. Janelle found her online. The girl looked scared in every photo, like she was trying not to exist. Janelle messaged her. No reply. She tried again. "Please. I don't want anything but the truth." A day later, Elena responded. "I know he didn't do it." They met behind a strip mall, the girl wearing sunglasses and shaking. "Michael didn't touch him," she whispered. "He tried to stop the fight. I saw it, but he saw who did." Janelle leaned forward, heart racing. "Who?" Elena hesitated. Then she looked over her shoulder and said, "If I tell you, they'll come for me too." 2 days later, Elena vanished. Her social media was wiped. Her phone went dark. Janelle went to the school. They said she transferred. Moved in with her aunt, they offered, too quickly. But no one knew her aunt's name. No one could tell Janelle where she went. It felt like erasure. Like someone had pressed delete. Janelle stared at the last message. Elena sent, "Be careful, they're watching." Her hands trembled. She realized this wasn't just incompetence. This was concealment. Maybe even conspiracy. Someone had something to lose, and they were willing to make people disappear to protect it. The fear that crept in was different now. It wasn't about losing Michael. It was about who else might fall if she kept digging. But Janelle had already passed the point of no return. Her son's life was worth the risk. Her voice would not be silenced. Not again. Michael's letters grew darker. He still wrote every week, always beginning with "Hi, Mom." But the lines were shorter now. The words less hopeful. He talked about the sounds at night, screams, beatings, guards laughing. About the way silence crawled through the cell bars and sat on your chest. "It's like drowning," he wrote. But slower. He asked about home. But Janelle knew he was testing to see if the world still existed for him outside. She replied to every letter. She sent poems. She sent photos. But most of all, she sent her fight, documented every move she made, every call, every lead. In his next letter he wrote just one line, "I'm still here, Mom, but not for long." Janelle held the page to her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't pray. She picked up the phone and called another lawyer. "You don't know me," she said, "but I'm not stopping." Janelle changed. The soft-voiced woman who once asked for help now demanded answers. She stopped wearing makeup, stopped caring how she looked. She wasn't here to make people comfortable anymore. She called reporters. She walked into law offices unannounced. "I'm Janelle Carter. My son's in prison for something he didn't do." Most didn't even look up. Some nodded politely. Others said, "Sorry, we're not taking new cases." She started recording everything. Phone calls, conversations, courthouse visits. She stopped waiting for permission. When people closed their doors, she knocked again. And again. Michael's letters got shorter. The prison took longer to deliver them. Still, she wrote back daily. "I'm still fighting," she told him. "Even if I have to burn down every lie they built around you." She wasn't chasing justice anymore. She was chasing blood truth. The kind that cuts, no matter who bleeds. She went back to the courtroom. Not for answers, for clues. She sat in the same gallery seat, stared at the bench where the judge once read out Michael's fate. She studied the walls, the cameras, the people who moved through the space like they owned it. On a bulletin board in the hallway, she noticed a security layout map. It showed the surrounding block. And there, barely marked, was a camera across the street from the party house. A city-owned unit. It hadn't been mentioned in court. Janelle's pulse spiked. She took a photo. Back home, she combed through public records, old maintenance requests, street logs. The camera had been active that night. So why wasn't the footage submitted? She filed a formal request. Days passed. Silence. She filed another. Then, a third. This time, someone answered. But it wasn't a form letter. It was a phone call. And the voice said only this: "Stop digging." Janelle didn't stop. The call only confirmed her suspicion. She revisited old names, people Michael had once studied with, teachers, co-workers from the diner. One name stood out: Darius Green, a classmate who'd vanished after the trial. He'd been at the party. Rumors said he moved away. But Janelle traced his old social media to a location 3 counties over. She drove there, 2 hours through rain. Found the apartment. Waited outside. When Darius finally stepped out, he flinched at the sight of her. "I ain't got nothing to say," he said. But Janelle didn't back down. "You saw what happened. You saw who did it." Darius looked around. His shoulders sank. "They told me to disappear." Janelle's voice was steady. "Tell me anyway." He paused. Then softly, "Michael didn't even touch him, but someone else did. Someone important." Her hands trembled, but her voice was steel. "Name." Darius said the name, and it stopped Janelle cold. Ryan Ellis. The Diaz nephew. He'd been at the party, he'd started the fight, and when it ended, he'd vanished. Not arrested. Not questioned. Just gone. Janelle checked every court transcript again. Ryan's name didn't appear once. She searched arrest records. Nothing. It was as if the system had erased him. Darius said he was scared. He thought Michael would talk. That's why they had to make it fast. Janelle sat in her car afterward, shaking. The puzzle pieces clicked. The silence. The fast trial. The threats. It wasn't incompetence. It was strategy. And now, she had a name. Someone with power. Someone they'd protected. Her next move wasn't about requests or paperwork. It was about exposure. If they'd buried Ryan, she'd dig him back up and drag every person who helped into the light. Janelle made a list. Judges, lawyers, police officers, names from court documents, anyone who could have known. She highlighted every connection to the Diat. Then she printed flyers with Ryan Ellis's photo. She posted them downtown, left them at the courthouse, mailed them to local reporters. Her phone rang with threats. She didn't care. The story was bigger now. Not just about Michael. It was about the rot in the system. She sent anonymous packets to journalists, documents she'd collected, screenshots of court omissions. Late one night, someone slid an envelope under her door. Inside were internal emails. Redacted, but damning. The Diaz office had discussed sealing potential conflicts of interest weeks before trial. Janelle knew what it meant. They knew. They all knew. And she wasn't asking anymore. She was coming for them. One name at a time. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Janelle almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was distorted, muffled, but urgent. You were right. The tape exists. It was recorded by the city camera across from the house. Her breath caught. She asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Silence. Then, "Because your son wasn't the one, and the people protecting the real killer are getting nervous." Click. Dot. Janelle stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. It was real. She hadn't been imagining the cover-up. Somewhere, there was proof. She didn't sleep. At sunrise she called every contact she had, legal clinics, journalists, students from the university film department. One responded, Marcus, a tech-savvy law student who once worked with the city's data department. "If that footage exists," he said, "I'll find it." For the first time in weeks, Janelle exhaled. She wasn't alone anymore. Marcus met Janelle at a coffee shop the next afternoon, laptop in tow. He was young, confident, and angry, not just about Michael, but about the entire system. They don't lose tapes, they hide them. He tapped through code, searched archived city feeds. After hours of scanning metadata and accessing backup logs, he found it, 10:43 p.m., time-stamped the night of the party. They held their breath as the footage loaded. The shaky black and white camera showed the sidewalk outside the house. First, silhouettes arguing. Then, a scuffle. A figure with a white hoodie punches the victim, not Michael. Another boy, taller, heavier. Michael enters the frame seconds later, trying to pull them apart. No weapon. No attack. Just reaction. Janelle whispered, "They knew." Marcus nodded. This should have ended the case, but they buried it. Janelle stared at the screen. Not anymore. They watched the footage 10 more times. Every angle. Every second. Then Marcus backed it up. 3 drives, hidden copies. "They'll try to erase it," he warned. "They always do." Janelle nodded, already planning her next move. They returned to the apartment, spreading documents and the footage frame captures across her dining table. The boy in the video, white hoodie, dark jeans, matched the school yearbook photo of Ryan Ellis. The resemblance was unmistakable. Marcus cross-referenced timestamps, witness statements, police reports. None mentioned the footage. None described the right attacker. "It's not just negligence," he said. "It's obstruction." Janelle said nothing. She was staring at the photo. At the boy who walked free, while hers was locked in a cage. She wasn't interested in vengeance. She wanted exposure. So the world could finally see what the courts tried to hide. The next morning, Janelle walked straight into the office of the same public defender who once failed her son. He blinked at the footage, then cursed under his breath. "I never saw this. They never gave it to me." She didn't scream. She didn't shout. She only said, "You will now." He called someone, a judge he trusted, off record. Within an hour, Janelle and Marcus were in a secure room, showing the footage again. The judge's face changed. This was hidden," he asked. Janelle said, "Not anymore." But the judge didn't smile. "You're going to be targeted." Janelle replied, "I already am." He nodded slowly. Then get ready, because this is about to get ugly. Janelle stood taller. Good. I'm done being polite. The war she started in her kitchen was now moving into the light. And no courtroom was safe. That night, the video leaked. Janelle didn't know how. Maybe Marcus. Maybe the judge. Maybe someone watching from the sidelines. But it didn't matter. It hit social media first. Then independent news sites. Then local TV voice. Video contradicts conviction in Carter case. Headlines exploded. The footage spread like fire. People watched a punch frame by frame. They compared faces. They started asking why the DA never mentioned it. Why the police lost it. Why a teenager spent years in a cage while the Diaz nephews started college. Janelle watched the coverage in silence. Michael hadn't been proven innocent in court, not yet, but the world was starting to see. Her son wasn't a villain. He was a sacrifice. And now the city had to answer. She looked at the screen, flames of outrage rising. She whispered, "Now we see who runs." The courthouse doors swung open. Janelle walked in like a soldier. No press, no entourage, just a mother armed with truth. In her hand, a binder filled with evidence. On her face, the look of someone who had nothing left to lose. Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Spectators whispered. Reporters filled the back rows. The judge presiding over the retrial was different, younger, watchful. Michael sat beside his new legal team, his eyes locked on the prosecution's table. The room silenced when the evidence played, the security footage, the emails, the contradictions. Every frame tore at the old narrative. And still, the DA's office pushed back. Chain of custody is unclear, they argued. This doesn't meet our burden. But it did. The room could feel it. The truth was not gentle, it roared. It clashed against polished wood and old lies. And Janelle didn't blink. "Tell the truth," she said. "Or I will." The prosecution stumbled. Their witnesses contradicted prior statements. One detective admitted under oath that the footage had been flagged and then misplaced. The courtroom gasped. Janelle gripped the bench in front of her. Her eyes locked on the DA, not the acting one in the room, but the man who had orchestrated the original trial. He sat in the gallery, stone-faced. A reporter turned and snapped a photo of him. For once he didn't smile. The weight shifted. The system, once confident, began to tilt. The media outside exploded with coverage. Pundits on every screen. Hashtags surged again. But inside that courtroom, it wasn't noise. It was reckoning. The story had been rewritten, not by power, not by politics, but by a mother who refused to disappear. The DA rose to leave, but Janelle stood first. "Sit down," she said. The whole room froze. He did. Outside, the city roared. Crowds lined the courthouse steps, chanting Michael's name. School buses passed by with kids pressed to the windows. Inside, the judge recessed for deliberation. Janelle stepped outside for air. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just watched. Watched the signs rise. Watched strangers defend her son. Watched a city that had once ignored her now scream with her voice. A woman approached, a stranger. "My son was arrested last year. I thought we were alone." Janelle nodded. "You're not." Across the street, someone painted "Free Michael" across the pavement in chalk. "Aight." Kids joined in, adding hearts. Janelle didn't stop them. She didn't say a word. But in her silence, the world listened. Because silence was no longer her prison. It had become her weapon. Back in the courtroom, the judge returned. The room held its breath. Michael stood slowly, hands clasped in front of him. The judge looked over his glasses. "This court finds the previous conviction unsound, based on new evidence and procedural misconduct." The silence was deafening. "Then, the sentence is vacated." Michael Carter is to be released immediately. The courtroom erupted. Reporters lunged forward. Flashbulbs lit the air. Janelle's body went limp, but she didn't fall. She stayed upright, trembling. Michael didn't smile. He just turned and locked eyes with her. 7 years lost. One truth returned. The guards stepped away. No more shackles. No more whispers. He walked down the aisle as the cameras clicked. But he only saw one person. His mother. And as they embraced, the city outside roared louder. But inside, there was only breath. Life returning. Michael walked out of the courthouse with the sky wide open above him. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. He said nothing. He held his mother's hand. They didn't run. They didn't smile. They moved forward, each step slow and heavy. Outside the press line, a group of teens waited. One held a sign that read, "I believe you." Michael stopped, nodded, then kept walking. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like silence, real silence. Not the kind that chokes, but the kind that heals. Janelle whispered, "You're free now." Michael looked up at the sun and replied, "Not yet, but I'm closer." As they crossed the street, a police cruiser passed. The officer stared. Michael stared back. Not with fear. Not anymore. The world would not erase him. He had survived the sentence. Now he would fight the shadow it left behind. Michael didn't celebrate. There were no balloons, no homecoming party. Just silence. After the press cleared out, he sat on the edge of his old bed, staring at the walls that hadn't changed in 7 years. The posters were faded, the books untouched. Janelle hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak or let him breathe. Michael broke the silence. "This isn't the same place." She nodded, but her voice cracked. "Neither are you." He opened a drawer and found an old photo of him and Jamal, smiling, arms around each other, young and free. His hand trembled. "He's still gone," he whispered. Janelle stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him. "So are those years, but you're still here." He didn't cry. He just leaned into her shoulder, letting her heartbeat remind him what freedom sounded like. It wasn't justice, but it was something like survival. He returned to Jamal's grave before he returned to himself. The cemetery was quiet, wind brushing dry leaves across the path. Michael stood alone, hands in pockets, staring at the etched stone. "I should have said something sooner," he said aloud. "I thought silence would protect me." His voice cracked. "But it just made me disappear." He knelt and placed the old photo gently at the base of the grave. "You were my brother, and I let them turn you into a story that blamed me." He didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't expect it. He just wanted the truth to sit with them both. Behind him, Janelle waited at the car, giving him space. Michael rose, wiped his hands on his jeans and whispered, "They heard me this time." Then he walked back, shoulders straight, steps slow. The past would never leave him, but it would not define him. The world moved on quickly. New stories, new scandals. But Michael was still catching up to himself. He walked different now, slower, more alert. He didn't like crowds. He didn't trust silence. At night, he woke up sweating. Some things prison leaves behind. But something else had taken root too, purpose. He volunteered at a youth center. He read about law. He started speaking at community events. People listened. Not because he was loud, but because his truth was. He never pointed fingers. He told the facts. And when asked why he still showed up, he said, "Because the system counted on me staying quiet." The same courtroom that caged him now hosted a lecture where he stood at the podium. "I was evidence they could erase," he told a packed crowd. "Now, I'm testimony they can't ignore." Janelle sat in the front row, tears in her eyes. This time, they were proud ones. Janelle had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. The scars were permanent, in her health, in her sleep, in her bones. People congratulated her, called her strong, but they hadn't seen the nights on the kitchen floor. The missed meals, the screaming silence. Still, she carried herself with grace. She kept every document, every note, every letter Michael wrote. One night, she placed them all in a box labeled "Never Again." She sealed it, then placed it beneath her bed. Not to forget, but to protect. She started speaking too. To mothers, to schools, to lawyers who still didn't get it. "Don't wait until it's your child," she said. "Break the system now." Her voice, once soft, now carried weight. Her pain had become armor. Her story, a weapon. And when people asked how she survived, she said, "I didn't, I rebuilt." Michael stood outside the courthouse that had stolen his youth. Same steps, same stone. But now, he wasn't the boy in cuffs. He watched as another trial began inside, another young black boy, just 17. Same age, same background, same odds. Michael didn't move. He just watched. The boy looked scared, his mother close behind him, gripping his shoulder. The doors closed behind them. Michael turned to the camera, quiet. "Justice isn't blind," he said. "It's just expensive." He didn't shout it. He didn't need to. The line cut like a knife through concrete. Behind him, traffic passed. Life continued. But the echo of that sentence, and the truth behind it, would not fade. He adjusted his jacket, looked up at the sky, and walked away. No music. No cheers. Just the sound of footsteps reclaiming ground. Fade to black. Silence. Gavel. Door slam.